Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're going to call to order the meeting, regular meeting for the Akron Public Schools Board of Education for May 4th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar.
Here.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Ms. Autry.
Present.
Mr. Bravo.
Here.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Here.
And we welcome our student board member from ECLC, Kyrese Brunson. Welcome.
Welcome, Kyrese. And if everyone except Kyrese could mute their microphones, we're going to ask Kyrese to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Kyrese, whenever you are ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And welcome to the board meeting. So with that, we are going to move on to community and school reflections. If anyone would like to start, and I will keep an eye on the chat, or if you want to give me a wave, I'll try to keep an eye out there too. Anyone?
I actually have some stuff to share.
Sure, Kyrese, go ahead.
Well, first off, hi, my name is Kyrese Brunson. I'm a junior at ECLC, and I'm a member of the Bridgestone Automotive Pathway. My learning style is verbal and auditory, and I do my best when I communicate and learn in person. Like many of my peers, I'm actually not used to the transition to online learning. One of those reasons is my math course. My math course I take is elementary statistics with Mr. Klein. In that class, we're learning the concept of z-testing. Z-tests are statistical calculations that can be used to compare populations. I feel like the concept of z-testing is best done in a face-to-face environment. In class, if I didn't understand a part of what Mr. Klein is teaching, I would raise my hand and ask him if he could explain the problem in further detail. Mr. Klein does his best to make sure we keep up with the online assignments that he assigns us in the Google Classroom. I've also attended Mr. Klein's office hours where I can ask him questions about things I don't understand. But in the Google Classroom, the interaction just doesn't feel the same. And I've texted my friends about this all the time. Students say it's more difficult because they're not used to learning this way. My peers and I think it would be helpful if our teachers collaborated when they assign classwork. For example, one of the assignments from Miss Ellis, my history teacher, was to watch a movie from 1959 called 12 Angry Men. And we had to choose a character of the 12 that best represents democracy and explain why. Students had more time to complete the assignment because it was a higher level thinking assignment and it took more time to do. My AP English test is May 20th. My AP teacher, Miss Whited, assigned 3 practice essays similar to the ones on the test. My chemistry teacher, Miss Breho, assigns 3 labs a week, and students attend a Zoom meeting that explains how different processes in chemistry work. And the lab directly follows that meeting that we must complete. It would be great if teachers could come together to create a plan for assignments during this time in order to keep students focused and better balance their schedules and allow us time to prioritize the more taxing assignments. Students do understand that teachers are doing online learning for the first time and they're learning this just as we are while coping with COVID-19 in their at-home lives. APS teachers are doing a really good job keeping students engaged, and students do appreciate it. And COVID-19 is affecting students who have jobs, myself included. I previously worked at Brimfield Family Restaurant, but it's since been closed due to the virus. My fellow board members, Luke and Addison, work at Acme and are considered essential workers. They have a lot of hours, and it's a challenge to balance their jobs with their schoolwork. It is really hard to come up with solutions for problems of this magnitude. However, the student board members are remaining active and working with adults to resolve issues. Essence Jackson attended the Senator Sherrod Brown's virtual My Brother's Keeper town hall meeting, where students across the state discussed how COVID-19 is affecting their lives. Monisha Rai is on the high school graduation committee, where students give input on ways to hold a safe, fun graduation. All of the student board members have received get-to-school graphics of the Cleveland Browns to use on our social media to get the word out about the Get to School campaign. The student board members enjoyed serving for the 2019-2020 school year, and those of us returning next school year look forward to serving again. On behalf of student board members, we wish health to all APS students, staff, their families, and the Akron community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyrese. Great report. And we appreciate the feedback as well. So we'll pass that along. Thank you so much. Anyone else for community and school reflections? Diana?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback and thank you, Kyrese. It's nice to see your face in person. I know we've emailed, and I do appreciate the feedback and the comments. So I just wanted to say that. Also, I just wanted to mention, although it's outside of my cluster, I know today the Bookdo staff did a big parade where they just drove around the whole community beeping their horns. I think I counted close to 40 cars, and I believe they're still going. So I just wanted to give a special shout out to them. I know those teachers were missing the students, and they did that. And then also, I just wanted to say a special thank you to Kathy McVeigh, who we had an orientation meeting with her last Thursday, and it was just very enlightening on what they're doing in HR. So I just wanted to give a special shout out to her and thank her and her department for their work.
Thank you so much, Ms. Autry. Ms. Mansfield?
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Patrick. Just wanted to mention that this is the strangest of our teacher appreciation weeks, but we do so appreciate our teachers. And in typical APS fashion, like Diana shared with the Bookdo teachers out, I know that Betty Jane was out today doing a parade with their staff. They laid out the map and let people know where they were going to be over the weekend. So you know, in typical fashion, it's our turn to honor them, and instead they're out seeing our students and showing why they deserve even more to be honored. So, you know, I know we're missing out this week on Teacher of the Year banquet and all those really special things that we do for teachers, but just reminding the public, if they can just post something nice, send a nice note, it would be greatly appreciated for our teachers. I know I appreciate them.
Thank you, Ms. Mansfield. Ms. McKittrick?
Hi, I want to piggyback on what both Diana and Lisa said. My daughter sent me video today of the parade of Betty Jane teachers going past their house. So shout out to them, and also to thank Mrs. McVeigh for her help with the orientation last week.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what they're saying. This is one of my favorite times of the year, school year, because we talk about teacher appreciation and the value of teachers. And we've heard a number of years of what I talk about as far as the teachers who were real instrumental in my life and who are the reason why I'm here now. But I think it's just they're so valued, and I don't think people really appreciated how valuable they are until now during this pandemic time. And that's sad that we do, but we need to keep teachers at the forefront and at the top of our list of professions, because if it weren't for teachers, where would any of us be? So I just like to say thank you to all the teachers, the parade at Bookdo, the parade at Betty Jane. Thank you for everyone in the community and the teachers and everyone who were involved there as well, because I know they love the students just as much as we do. And sometimes I don't think it's appreciated as much, but we need to show our appreciation more to our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Dr. Akbar and then Dr. Hall.
Sorry, I was on mute. I just wanted to just extend the same type of gratitude and appreciation to our teachers. It is because of teachers why I personally have dedicated my life to education and am where I am today. So teachers are the foundation of our community and the growth of our economy, whether they get the credit that they rightfully deserve or not. And so this is not the only time we will appreciate you, but this is definitely a time where we will. So thank you and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. Dr. Hall?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Yeah, first, I just want to echo the complimentary comments as it relates to Kathy McVeigh's session. It was very informative and definitely appreciate her time. And then next to pivot, I have to say that this is this is the week every year that I find almost as special as Christmas. My mother's a teacher and my grandmother and uncle and aunt are all teachers, all taught in Akron. My grandmother's not deceased, but she taught in Akron for 35 years. And I have an uncle and aunt that still teach in the North Cluster at the elementary school and junior high level. And so we always celebrate this week in my household. And as I have said often, the folks who have had the most impact in molding me and the people that I love the most in this life are all teachers, whether people in my family or folks that I had at the grade school, junior high or high school level. So this week is always very personal for me. Yes, I'm glad to hear us all sort of recognizing this. And I look forward to in later years to being part of once COVID passes, being part of even more celebrations to celebrate all the wonderful things that our teachers are doing for our district. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. I think we've heard from everyone. Unless anyone has anything else, we have no request to address the board. So we will move on to the approval of the regular meeting minutes for April 20th, 2020. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Alexander, a second from Dr. Akbar. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, roll call, please.
I think we lost Ryan.
I'm just double checking that right now. We did. We lost our secretary.
He's says his computer froze and he's restarting.
All right. Well,
So while it's happening, you all can work on your eyes as opposed to yeses and presents.
Aye, Captain.
I like what you said so much. I might switch it for today. In honor of your mom.
Holiday. Right.
all right.
He's
We'll give him just a
gonna call
moment.
in, so
Okay.
It should be noted that all of you have Spectrum. Those of you that have that are having internet issues.
Oh dear.
That's a little humor. That's a little humor. I have a ton of friends who work at Spectrum. They do great work, and we appreciate them. So just having a little bit of fun. That's all.
And if you're listening, Spectrum, I have you, and I will take your discount. Thank you.
All right. I believe we have Ryan back on the line.
I'm back on the line, but not via the internet. So I'm on the phone.
Well, we have a motion from Mr. Alexander and a second from Dr. Akbar for approval of the April 20th, 2020 meeting minutes. Can you help us with a roll call, please?
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes. Aye.
Ms. Autry, Ms. Autry,
Aye.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Skipped me.
I didn't skip you. I'm doing this cold. Thank you. Mr. Alexander
Aye.
and Mrs. Mansfield.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.
I got all 7. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pendleton. And all right. We are ready for superintendent recommendations, personnel.
Yes, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the personnel recommendations presented in categories 5 through 16.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Dr. Akbar, a second by Ms. McKittrick. Are there any comments, questions, or discussion on the personnel recommendations? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. McKittrick,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
and I'm missing one more. I'm sorry. I don't have my list up.
Miss Autry, yes.
Miss Autry, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Pendleton,
Okay.
if you want me to quit picking on you, we can ask someone else to handle roll call.
No, you should pick on me, and I now have my internet back up, so I'm good to go. I'll be logging in here shortly. So pick away, please.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Superintendent.
Next, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the resolutions and motions presented in category 21.
So
Great.
moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. McKittrick and a second by Mr. Alexander for approval of the consent agenda. Are there any comments, questions, or discussions before we vote?
Yes, actually, yeah, Mr. President, I do actually have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So really related to the to the grant for the Akron after school program. I just would like, for folks in the public who perhaps are listening, I just would like to, if we could sort of take a minute, kind of talk about sort of the importance of those programs. And then also too, the question I had was, are there, what sorts of outcomes or tracking metrics do we have in place for these programs to kind of sort of demonstrate, the continued value of them?
Most of the activities around the 21st century grants with our after school program are really around recreation. We do have a tutoring component where some of our teachers, provide support for some of the students after school, but a majority of it is really focused on the majority is a recreational component, which is in line with the 21st century grants.
So by recreation, is it sort of so talking more about sort of educational sort of based games and activities for students?
Yes, I mean, through our Akron after school program, we'll arrange for groups to come in. In past years, we've had Mad Science, we've had Camp Invention for some of this, a variety of other providers as well.
And then just a quick follow-up, Dr. James, with respect to the tutoring component. So is that available sort of at all the after-school programs, and sort of is it sort of tutoring sort of as needed? Sort of how does that come about?
Yeah, most of it is based on the availability of our teachers to stay after for that tutoring component. And if I'm not mistaken, the majority of that is focused on English language arts and math, those two critical areas.
Roger that. All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Good questions, Dr. Hall. Thank you. Any other comments, question, or discussion before we vote on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yeah.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the business affairs recommendations presented in category 23.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion for Mrs. Mansfield and a second for Mrs. McKittrick. Any comment, question, or discussion on the business affairs agenda items?
Yes, actually, I do have a question. I may have missed it, and if so, I apologize. I was looking here through the where did the textbook approvals fall? Have we gotten to that yet, or or have we already sort of? Let's make sure I understand where we're at. I may have missed that. That was actually I would say it was 20, item 20.1.
Yes. So in the
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. So my question there was, I just wanted to understand again, from the perspective of a public community member, the public content. I know that there's some language there about board members being able to sort of preview those books sort of virtually between this meeting and the meeting that happens on May 18th. And so just really interested, not necessarily right now at this moment, but just want to understand a bit more. There are criteria that are in place. We have a committee structure that's there. I just think that it'd be educational for the public to kind of hear at a high level the process that we employ to select things like textbooks, for example. So we can kind of come back to that for the next board meeting. But again, I think that would be sort of beneficial to hear more. I know I would benefit more hearing about that. And we'll do the best that I can to sort of, take part in that sort of virtual preview as well. But again, we'll love to sort of understand the criteria that we employ and sort of how the scoring sort of works and sort of how we arrive at, at making big decisions around these textbooks.
Okay, we'll do that. I'll have Dr. McWilliams-Woods have her folks available for that.
Roger that. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
We
it.
have just a little bit of an updated instructional policy too. I think Valerie's going to go over that part.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ms. Mansfield.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, or discussion?
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment as well. I had emailed Dr. James earlier about item 23.8, just trying to gain some understanding on what, how funds are being spent, and just for the sake of educating the public. I didn't realize that some of our buildings weren't required to have that second set of doors for safety reasons. I just assumed that we all had them. So just acknowledging that is what is being handled in those particular agenda items, that we are adding that second set of doors for safety of our students.
That's a good question. Mr. Superintendent?
Yeah, and I just want to thank Ms. Autry for asking that question, because again, I was unaware of that as well. So that was educational for me as well. So again, appreciate you asking the question, Ms. Autry, and thank you, Dr. James, for the response on that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, just for information, in the early Ohio School Design Manual, the building designs did not have the requirement for a secure vestibule, meaning that while to get into the building from the outside, you would get buzzed in. There wasn't a second set of doors like there are on some of our later buildings like Buchtel and Krause and Ellett. And so we're going back and taking care of that in some of our earlier buildings that just had a single set of doors. So now this is the second wave of these upgrades. Where we're adding the second set of doors. So it's a more secure entry into these buildings.
Great.
Roger. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Diana, for bringing that up. Good point. Any other comments, questions, or discussion on the business affairs agenda items? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall, Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, two items. I know one that's top of mind for many people has to do with, what are we doing about graduation? So over the last couple of weeks, we've had principals and students from each of our high schools meet. About 13 students were involved to come up with recommendations based on the Ohio Department of Health and Ohio Department of Education guidelines. There was actually some guidance from the Department of Education. I believe that came out early last week in response to one of the press conferences that the governor gave, detailing some more requirements for graduation. And so with that information, the students came up with a proposal that we are finalizing. It should be finalized mid to late week this week. And it basically deals with their desire to be able to have ceremonies where individual students can walk across the stage at each of our high schools to get their diploma with a small number of family members present. We would videotape each student walking. We would schedule those small groups so they're socially distant from one another. And after they finish walking the stage, we would allow a station to be present at each building, whether it's at the outside ground sign or whether it's at a internal place where there's a backdrop celebrating the class of 2020. So they can take pictures of that. And then we would string those videos together, including recordings of the typical graduation speeches that would be given, yearly. So those would be scheduled and recorded separately and then put into a video that we would then schedule for the entire class to be able to view as it's streamed, remotely in their own homes or what have you. And so there are a couple of more steps to this. I have to run it by the Summit County Public Health Department just to make sure we're not violating anything. And then once we get that approval and just a few more, dotting I's and crossing T's, we should be ready, to share that with you all and then provide that guidance to our schools and contact our parents and students so they know what the procedure will be. Each student at each building who's graduating will have a separate appointment that will be set up over for all the students. It'll take several days. For instance, like Ellett High School, I believe they will have over close to 200 or over 200 graduates. So it'll take time to get those students across and videotaped and everything. But that is the plan. I think we will be able to pass muster with all the health requirements that are in place and give the kids something, that they can celebrate their achievement. We can still have, like we typically do, have a board member speak at the graduations. But again, those will be recorded and added, to the video after the students actually cross the stage and get their diploma.
Mr. Superintendent, just to clarify before we open it up for any questions, the recorded speeches that you spoke about, that would include any of the typical student speeches, valedictorian speeches, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Those would all be recorded separately, and then they would be added into the overall video. So they wouldn't be happening while kids are crossing the stage. They would be recorded separately.
Perfect. Thank you. Any comments or questions for the superintendent? And I am paying attention to the chat if I don't see you wave. Mr. Hall, it looks like you might have something, and then Ms. Mansfield, and then Ms. Autry.
Yeah, this is Dr. Hall. I did. Yeah, I guess I had one question because I think some of the other board members have also gotten questions on this as well from people in the community. And I apologize if this has already been addressed, but you know, how soon will we be able to publish sort of this sort of process and procedure? And if we have published it, my apologies. But if not, how soon will we be able to publish this for folks in the community?
Yeah, my plan was to try and get at least that general plan published by the end of the week, as long as I get approval from the health department on the procedures that we're outlining. The more detailed plan actually includes the students' names and an appointment time when they will show up at the building to walk across the stage, get their diploma, turn in their Chromebook. That is those are dates that we're trying to put together as we speak, and that'll go out in correspondence directly to each of the graduating seniors.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Ms. Mansfield and then Ms. Autry.
So I just wanted to give kudos to those who've been working on this. I know that Dr. McWilliams-Woods gave Mrs. McKittrick and I an update on this week. I know the superintendent is happy to announce something so that I stop sending him different for every person who tagged me on Facebook, for Virginia's, how they were doing it in South Carolina. Thank you. They did all go to the superintendent. But I do appreciate that we took student input on this, and also the staff from the buildings that work with seniors, because they do this every year, right? And one of the things that makes us special, especially among big districts, is that we do allow each school to have, we don't have a cookie cutter graduation. So that's one of the things that for the new board members, or those of you who've been to several of our graduations, you know that they're not all alike. And so I love that this allows for that. We let Vikings be Vikings, we let Griffs be Griffs, we let Falcons be Falcons, and there'll be something special this way. It is kind of scripted because it has to be in this environment for the health department. But that being said, we're still allowing for that creativity, and I'm so happy that there is some kind of solution so these students get to have something special.
Thank you. Ms. Autry.
Yes. Yeah, I actually didn't have a question, but I just wanted to thank the superintendent and the students and the principals for putting this process together, because I know it's just been a big topic. It's all over social media, what's happening around the country, and everyone has input on what they think should happen. So it's nice to have some structure of how things are going to look and that they're going to be able to celebrate. And then that being said, I know we can't plan anything, but I just want to throw prom out there at a future date, possibly. I know that's something too that I've heard talked about. I don't know if that's something that we can be involved in at a future time, with maybe having some type of joint prom. I don't know, but just throwing that out there to keep on the back burner moving forward. But I'm happy with the plan. I think a lot of people will be as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the superintendent, Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, I want to thank the superintendent as well as the principal, and always appreciate the students' involvement and their input, because I've been asked a lot too, and I did mention it, I believe this is our last board meeting in reference to graduation. And again, myself as well, I've been getting a lot of people calling or emailing and talking about this. And I did call the superintendent this morning and asked him about it. He did say he would have this presentation for us. So I want to thank him, because the kids and families do want to have it, and the kids really deserve something. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, thank you. Anything else for the superintendent? All right. For my report, I really just had two quick things, and we'll see if this works. I'm sure everybody gets nervous when I'm about to share something, because who knows? But I wanted to give a very brief shout out to one of our students who was featured in Governor DeWine's daily press conference recently. And so Takaya Primus Blackman, for her artwork that stated we're in this together. It was a beautiful piece of art, and the governor featured it on his daily press briefing. And again, it was beautiful. She's an 8th grader from Litchfield Middle School, does a fantastic job. Great article this week in the Beacon Journal. So if you get a chance, if you didn't see that, please check it out. But that was absolutely beautiful. So loved seeing that from her. Also, as we know, not only an advocate of Akron Public Schools kids, but always an advocate of school kids everywhere. LeBron James on May 16th is doing his Graduate Together 2020. So he's doing a presentation with lots of star power behind it to honor all of our 2020 graduates. And so if you get a chance, that's at graduatetogether2020.com. And so just wanted to send a shout out there because, of course, he's just a kid from Akron, but to us, he's always a star. So, and we appreciate everything he does, not only for Akron's kids, but kids across the country. So, and again, as always, appreciate all of you, appreciate the emails throughout the week, appreciate the feedback and the questions. Really stellar work, given that we're all working remotely. Appreciate all of you stepping up to the plate. So thank you very much. And with that, we will move on to Treasurer's Report.
Thank you. Dr. Akbar asked a question this morning in our preparation for the board meeting. And little did we know that shortly thereafter, we would receive our initial CARES Act elementary and secondary schools emergency relief fund allocations. So I'd like to touch base on this, hopefully answer all the questions, but then Dr. Akbar, make sure that I covered everything from your questions this morning. So as you're all aware, the Federal CARES Act has been in place now for a couple of weeks, and the various departments of education around the United States are waiting on their allocation, how those funds will be received, how the local school districts will receive those funds, what process is going to be to draw them down. So let me start with the allocation and then talk to you about the process moving forward. The allocation that Akron Public Schools receives is just under $10.7 million. Of that, approximately 1.2 million will need to be distributed equitably to our non-publics. And this is in direct response to COVID-19. And the general rules in drawing these funds and spending these funds are to serve students equitably across the district in expenditures that have resulted from COVID-19. There's approximately 15 different categories in how we can spend these funds, but the actual use and direction and guidance from the Department of Education is not yet clear. We also haven't drawn the money. The next steps in the draw is submitting an application through the Department of Education's website, which we should be able to start accessing tomorrow. Identify those expenditures back to March 13th that qualify. Within the next few weeks, we can begin drawing those funds from the expenditures that qualify to, in a sense, reconcile our books through the end of June 30. And then obviously we're not going to spend $10 million between now and the end of the school year. The remaining part of those funds will carry over and be allowable uses for expenses through September 30th of 2021. So let's put it into perspective, hopefully in terms of what our budget is, just so we can get an idea of the size and scope of that. So approximately $10 million, of which $1.2 million gets transferred to our non-publics, or they flow through our district. We also have to account for any state of Ohio education budget cut. And you know, from previous reports, we've talked anywhere from 5 to 20%, with local government agencies estimating and planning for 20% or greater. And just if we look at the state aid of approximately 160 million that we receive from the state, we'll want to use all of that 10 million to offset any of the expenses that we wouldn't be able to cover otherwise with other federal grants or general fund. So that's a lot in the readings that I've been pouring over today with the superintendent. Thankfully to the finance committee, we've pushed the finance committees off just another week. That will allow finance committee to hit May 11th and then May 18th before the 5-year forecast. So hopefully between now and May 18th, we have a really good idea of what those allowable expenses are and how we put them into practice and start to maybe plug some of the holes in the budget as a result of future state budget cuts, potential housing delinquencies, or any reduction in our investment income as we outlined in that first initial report. That'll conclude my report, and then I can open it up for questions for the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent, Ms. Autry, and then Dr. Akbar?
Yeah. So I know it seems like a lot of expenditures went towards hotspots and technology and whatnot. So will that be reimbursed, or is that just something we've spent out of our general fund, or how do you know
Great
that?
question. Great question. We believe that hotspot-related technology will be a reimbursable expense. We believe it will be. So the way that we don't have written from the department that says here's exactly what you can reimburse for. I'm working with the other law districts around the state of Ohio. We're coming up with those expenses that we've already encumbered, issued purchase orders, and even paid for in some result. We're creating a list and we're sharing those with the Department of Education this Thursday so that we can make sure that a lot of those expenses that we wouldn't otherwise have would be covered. So hopefully I can give you an answer on that after Thursday or for next week's Finance Committee. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Dr. Akbar?
Yes. So my question is more so about the drawdown process and the thought process behind that. So I understand you can draw down funds based off expenditures that you've already made. But is there a thought process that since we have until June 30th, that we would do it all in one lump sum, or would we continue to look at what expenditures we've had and what qualifies and do drawdowns on a certain calendar or schedule?
Mm-hmm. Good question, Dr. Akbar. It's a combination of both. So definitely those expenses that we have had back to March 13th, those are out of our pocket. To Ms. Autry's question, we would put together what's called a cash request or a project cash request to the state of Ohio. We would draw that money because we've spent it, and then it would be an allowable expense. But going forward, like we do with all of our other state and federal grants, we would develop a calendar so that we could draw the money as we spend it. The state of Ohio, now the rules may be a little bit different here, but as I know you work with federal grants as well, we can't draw the money in advance and sit on it in our book. It has to be within, I think the federal rules say that we have to spend it within 3 days of drawing it. So normally what we do is draw it on the monthly basis so that it keeps track with our monthly reconciliation process. But very good question. Thank you.
No problem.
Good, thank you. Any other questions for the treasurer?
Yes, yes, Mr. President. I actually have one question, if I may. So again, just if I was a member of the public sitting through this meeting tonight, and I heard that 1.2 million of it was going to non-publics, I'd be asking, so what do you mean $1.2 million goes to non-publics? Why does it go to non-publics, and what kinds of things, you know, and so why would it go to non-publics, and what uses would non-publics have for these funds? And also, are we responsible for administering the drawdown for the non-publics?
Yeah, great question. So as you're aware, but maybe our public doesn't know, we serve our non-publics in equitable services from, and I know the curriculum instruction side of the house can speak to it much better than I can, but much in line with what we use our services for Title I, we are that funding flow through source from the publics to the non-publics and students there that are served there. So this is not an uncommon practice for sure. And I'll pause there to kind of turn it back over if the superintendent or assistant superintendent want to talk about the actual instructional services that we provide to those non-publics that make a little bit more sense.
Sure. Through our auxiliary services department, we'll provide a lot of services to our parochial and non-public schools. We're required by state law for the money that the state sets aside for those schools, that the money flows through us first, and then it goes directly to those particular schools. And I'm sure Dr. McWilliams-Woods can add something to that as well.
Yeah, this is what we have to do every single year. So it's money allocated per pupil where they go to school, and the money just flows through us. And then they get the same types of services that each private school gets to determine how they, or parochial school, determine how they want to use their federal dollars. So they could use it for tutoring. They may provide additional counseling services. They purchase additional, technology. They can use those funds, and it just flows through us. And we just have to have meetings with them to distribute the money and then determine how they want to use it. So this is an extension of that same process that we do every year.
Good, thank you. Any other questions for our superintendent or a treasurer? Sorry. All right, hearing none. Committee reports, legal, contracts, and board policy.
Yes. So the legal, contract, and board policy committee met last Monday to discuss two policies. One, we are bringing forward to you today for the third and final reading, which is on public participation. And the other that we're still under consideration and development of is our naming policy for in commemoration of someone for any of our facilities or areas within our buildings and properties. So before you today is the public participation policy, and it is policy in our bylaws, 0169.1, public participation at board meetings. And this is, again, the third and final reading and up for discussion. The highlights as far as the differences from the policy passed in March of 2018 is that we now are moving towards allowing the public to sign up for to address the board the day of the meeting. We also make sure that we specify that no one person can speak more than once at that meeting. And then we also put in what I thought was some good ideas around how do we manage and protect our students, our student records, and our personnel records. So we did that as well for anyone who might have any concerns or complaints that fall under that category, those categories as well. So that is the public participation policy.
Great, and it's up for third and final reading. Bruce, did you have anything before we ask for a motion?
No, I think Dr. Akbar explained all of it really well and thoroughly, and I think the policy is ready to be moved forward.
Great, then we'll entertain.
Mr. President, before we do that, I do have one clarification question I'd like to pose, if I may. So, for example, so for those folks who are again, this is a public policy, and I just want to make sure that, for clarity's sake, that we kind of lay out in the policy that a person can register his intent to sign up at the meeting prior to being called to order. Basically, at the time of the meeting. But if they do it electronically, they have to do it no earlier than 16 business days prior to the meeting. So a person reading through this might wonder, why, if I'm doing it electronically, must it be 16 days earlier than the meeting, as opposed to whereas if I just show up, I can show up and register, 10 minutes before. So I just want to make sure that we answer that question for those in the public who may read through this policy.
I'll let someone else jump in, but I think part of that is also that typically the comments must pertain to the business before the board. But Dr. Akbar?
Well, there's two things. One, if someone signs up the meeting prior and we run out of time for public comments, then that person can be moved to the next meeting. The other piece of that is we don't want someone signing up 3 months in advance to speak on something that may not even be before us at that time. So we want it to be as much as possible a way for us to be responsive to the community and to concerns that are before the board.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Any other comments, questions? We'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second by Mrs. McKittrick, or a first motion by Mrs. McKittrick, a second by Mrs. Mansfield. Are there any comments, final comments, questions, or discussion?
I have one, Patrick.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Bravo. I just want to give kudos to the Legal and Board Policy Committee. Watching the evolution of this and where we started and where it got to, I'm really proud of the work that went into this. So, all the considerations, any concerns I had are very, I think it's easy to read. I think it's easy to understand. So just real kudos for that. I appreciate all the work that went into it, especially to protect students and staff. And I just really want to say, I know this was something that was a concern, and it was taken on with grace and with due diligence. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Great. Dr. Akbar and then Mr. Alexander. Thank you.
Well, okay. Yes. The biggest thing is I just wanted to thank everyone for participating in the process, and it is my hope that we do amend this policy today and accept it in its current form. My understanding and hope is that this policy amended will allow our community members to present both their successes and their concerns to the board as they have them, without feeling like there are constraints to providing those concerns and successes. But it is also my hope that this policy will bring the community closer to the board and the board closer to the community. Because we really want to hear from you and want to do what we can to make sure that that's possible. I also want to point out that although we are hopefully going to pass this policy today, we are still meeting virtually, and I just want to put that out there, and that we are meeting virtually, and that is true for the foreseeable future. And so we still want to hear from you. So please call us and email us. As we move back to meeting in person, that our policy will be in full practice. So we hope to hear from you.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone because the committee did work hard, but it wasn't just a committee. It was all the board members who came to the meetings, and it was the the superintendent, it was the administration, it was everyone who came to make this happen, this policy adjustments and revisions. And more or less, also I have to give Dr. Akbar kudos because he's the one who kind of brought it to our attention, pushed for it, and we looked at it, and now we're here today to vote on this policy. So I want to thank everyone because the policy committee was the policy committee, but it was everyone's input. So it's not just everyone. I want to make sure everyone knows that we do have a policy committee and we're responsible for various policies, but all board members have an opportunity to weigh in on all committees as well as administration. So thanks to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And also before we vote, I just wanted to say too, I mean, you guys were thanking everybody else, but I do want to say thank you to Dr. Akbar for kind of spearheading this effort, and Bruce for you guys as a team for bringing this up and for the great conversation that we had. I know this one we talked about a lot because it's important. And I think it's also important to point out, I was talking to someone earlier today and reminding them too that we've always welcomed and encouraged public comment and participation since the time that I came on the board, before we even actually had phone numbers or district email addresses. We have really encouraged people to reach out to give us feedback, to let us know, to cheer us on when they're happy with something that we've done, and to let us know when they're not happy with something that we've done or not done. We've also taken these meetings out as sort of a roadshow, and I'd love to get back to that at some point, and brought that up recently in a meeting that we've done as many as 6 meetings a year where we went out to the clusters and met at those high schools and gave people, we actually did open mic nights essentially at the end of each meeting to give people an opportunity to give us comments and feedback. So really would love to see us get back to that again. But I appreciate all of your hard work. And Dr. Akbar, I think you have a few more that you mentioned, but want to thank you again for helping lead this effort. So I'll give it back to you before we take a vote.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I also just wanted to publicly thank Ryan Pendleton as well as Diana Fidel, who really worked alongside with us to make sure that we were capturing everything that everyone was saying, and that it also was doing the best to protect our district. So thank you. I know Ryan's here. I think Diana's on the phone. So I just wanted to say that as well.
Thank you.
Yes, I second that. I second that for sure.
Well said, guys. Thank you so much. We do have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alex,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Finance and capital management.
Yeah, I think as Ryan's pointed out, our next meeting are scheduled for May 11th and May 18th. So we'll have something further to report out then. Thank you, though.
Thank you so much. Instructional policy and student achievement.
Good evening. Yes. Tonight in the board letter, there was an outline of the recommended materials by our district's math adoption team for our upper level math courses. At our next board meeting on the 18th, we will seek a motion to adopt these digital resources and textbooks. However, because we don't have the materials displayed because of our virtual meetings, Ruth Hotchkiss, our math learning specialist, has created a video and a PowerPoint that includes some teachers who served on the adoption committee and also some student voices. And these materials are linked in our committee section of board docs, and Dr. McWilliams-Woods will also email them to you. And now Mrs. Mansfield is going to give us an update on the APS Connected Learning.
Thank you. Thanks, Valerie. We continue to carefully track all of our student participation in the connected learning. And thanks to thousands of phone calls, some texts, some emails, some video calls, and even knocks on doors from teachers, principals, and tech and student services staff, those connectors that we talked about in a previous meeting, they were assigned to kind of case manage and help students to stay engaged. We saw a 5% point increase in the past week in students participating versus inconsistently participating. Some of that increase is due to more seniors being counted as actively participating now that those on-track seniors were able to shift over to a Google Classroom run by the College and Career Academy office to prepare for their 3 E's. Those E's, of course, are enrollment, enlistment, or employment. And that equates to 1,193 more students who are actively participating versus inconsistently participating than the week before. So huge kudos to those connectors and all the hard work they're doing, and to our students for continuing to engage in this new environment. Thank you.
Thank you. And my only comment or feedback is that we always talk about the 3 E's. I would love to see us add the 4th E of entrepreneurship. That's been brought up before, and I'd still love us to keep that one alive as well. And we do have a pathway, so I would love to see us talk about the 4 E's. Any comments, questions, or discussion? And that's not a criticism, by the way, Miss Mansfield. You guys are doing amazing work. I
think that's a great one. And it could also, it kind of feeds into that whole service learning piece too. That's really important to our district. And we know right now that there are people in our community, students in our community who are serving and doing things that are volunteer right now. In fact, I got a stack of cards this high from students today that are writing them for seniors. So good stuff that's happening out there.
Good, thank you. Any other comments, questions, or discussion for the Instructional Policy and Student Achievement Committee? Hearing none, we have no unfinished business. We have no new business. We do have a need pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1 to discuss the employment of personnel, to recess into executive session. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any final comments, question, or discussion before we recess into executive session? All right, as usual, we will adjourn and ask you to please completely exit out of this meeting before joining the second one. And when you're finished, if it's not on your homepage, please go back to your calendar invite and the link for this meeting will be there. And we will return back to general or regular session shortly.
Don't forget to vote.
Need a motion.
Yeah.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second from Ms. Mansfield and Ms. Autry. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
All right, perfect. We'll see you there in just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cascade Auto Group is proud to support streaming audio on the Summit. Cascade Auto Group offers the full line of Subaru, Mazda, and Audi products. For a full list of cars, hours, and more information, visit them online at Cascade.
Bruce, you need to exit out of this meeting and then.
Oh, did I exit out? Okay.
revolution began here. In the early 1970s, the home of Devo, daring to be different. We are the Summit.
Hi, this is Patrick Sweeney. Thanks for listening to The Summit and supporting local radio. The Summit is independent, non-commercial public radio from Akron, Canton, and Young.
That's the Patrick Sweeney Band, Kent, Ohio. I'll Take Care of You is from the Kent State CD Project, the May 4th CD Project double album from 2005. We've been playing songs from that all day today, commemorating the May 4th anniversary. We had Devo with That's Good. We did Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young, Ohio. We did Devo with Freedom of Choice. And thank you again to Jerry Casale for being our guest today and sharing his recollection of being there on that fateful day 50 years ago. Going to do one more Kent-related song, another song that has to do, that came out, in the aftermath of the events of May 4th, 1970. Steve Miller Band came out with this song called the Jackson Kent Blues on the Summit.
takes place this Tuesday, May 5th. It's a global day of support for the nonprofit organizations that make a difference in our communities. The summit is celebrating by giving our members a chance to recognize the gifts of kindness and love that have made a difference in their lives. Generosity has the same power as music. It can unite and heal communities in good times and bad. You can support the unique mix of music and programming you'll only find here on your local public radio station by becoming a member today at thesummit.fm. Your gift to the summit powers your connection to local music, new music, and all of the unique programming and services the summit offers. Join the movement today. You can give now at thesummit.fm. And thank you.
That's the Police from the earliest days, their very first 7-inch single before the first album. The first single was Fall Out, Nothing Achieving, and they were a punk rock band in the earliest days. That was the Police with an early rarity, Nothing Achieving, on the Summit. And it's all about the music on the Summit. Support for the Summit provided by the Akron Auto Club, providing emergency road service, travel and insurance agency services, and traffic safety, education, and advocacy for members and motorists for over 100 years. Information about the full range of benefits, how to join, and how to give the gift of AAA membership, available at 3 Summit County locations and online at AAA.com. All right, coming up after 7 o'clock, it's Front Row Center, live music from the archives. This is Red Wanting Blue on the Summit.
I would for love, I would for love. Baby, baby, I need your heart, I need your blood. And if I crawl on hands and knees and swim the stormy seas for you, I would.
Akron, Canton, Youngstown weather at the Summit.
For tonight, areas of frost will occur overnight, otherwise mostly cloudy with a low around 34 degrees. Tomorrow, partly sunny with a slight chance of showers in the afternoon, a high near 54. Tomorrow night, cloudy and chilly with a slight chance of showers, a low around 39 degrees. On Wednesday, cloudy and breezy with possible showers, a high near 52. And on Thursday, patchy frost in the morning, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 57 degrees. This forecast underwritten by Royal Docks Brewing Company on Fulton Road in Canton, offering online ordering for beer and food to go, pickup or delivery at docks.beer. With your latest Summit forecast, I'm Chad Miller.
With a mission of music, music discovery, and community. This is The Summit. WKTL Struthers Youngstown, WAPS Akron Canton, WAPS HD1 Akron. Heard at 91.3 FM in Akron Canton, 90.7 FM in Youngstown and the Mahoning Valley and Western PA. Streaming worldwide at thesummit.fm. True to the music, by music lovers and for music lovers. This is The Summit. Back in the before times, public gatherings were permitted and even encouraged. Concerts happened frequently at many venues. But then a pandemic swept across our planet in 2020, putting a halt to live performances. Luckily, back in the day, someone was rolling tape. This is Front Row Center on The Summit.
All right, here we go with live music. 1 hour's worth of Studio C archives and the original Jim Cheneau Front Row Center breaks. Tonight, U2, Paul McCartney, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, live. The English Beat. It's Front Row Center. This is a new artist that came in like 2 years ago for Studio C, a newer artist named Tori McGee. And she did a terrific take on this Johnny Cash tune live from the Studio C archives on the Summit.
I hear the train a-coming, it's rolling down the bend. And I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when I'm stuck in Folsom Prison. Time keeps dragging on. Oh, but that train keeps a roll all down to San Antone. Well, when I was just a baby, my mama told me, honey, always be a good girl, don't you ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry. You can feel free to give a hand to David Carrico's on guitar. Well, I bet there's rich folks eating in their fancy dining cars. They're probably drinking coffee, smoking big cigars. But I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. Oh, but those people keep moving, and that's what tortures me. Well, they freed me from this prison and the railroad train was mine. I thought I'd move it on a little farther down the line. But from Folsom Prison, that's where I want to stay. Oh, when I let that lonesome whistle blow my blues away.
So Ryan, I have a question. How do I get one of those fancy profile, like glamour shots to show?
Let us know we are good. Thank you, Mr. Rittenhouse, and welcome back to the regular session for the Akron Public Schools Board of Education meeting for May 4th, 2020. We do have need for action this evening. We have 2 MOUs between the district and the Akron Education Association. One involving teacher evaluations and one involving reductions in force. Mr. Pendleton, would you like to take each one individually, or can we do both at the same time?
If you could do them individually, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. On the first MOU regarding teacher evaluations, do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Autry, and I believe a second by Ms. Mansfield, if that's correct.
Yes.
That was Val.
Oh, Valerie, thank you so much. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Thank you.
And our second MOU between the Board of Education and the Akron Education Association regarding resignation, termination, or non-renewal of contracts. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mrs. Mansfield and a second by Mr. Alexander. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, anything else to come before this board tonight? Hearing none, thank you all so much for your hard work and your for keeping this district moving forward. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Dr. Akbar and Mr. Alexander, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 See, we did aye, Mr. Hall.
Appreciate that, sir. Appreciate that,
Aye,
Mr.
aye,
President.
Captain.
Any opposed? I'd like to hear a nay. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
All right, everybody have a good
Bye,
evening.
everyone.
Good evening.